a Mook, and a Mike, hosted by four-time Emmy-nominated producer Frank Pace, with retired New York City firefighter and Vietnam vet Billy O'Connor.
My brother, how you doing?
My brother Frankie, how you doing, pal? Getting ready for Christmas?
Yeah, I am getting ready for Christmas. We're in week 2 or week 3 or whatever we are in of the our COVID experience, where we're separated by 190 miles or 90 miles or something like that.
90 miles, I think, but separated more by weather than we are by distance.
Yeah, is it snowing up there?
No, we had a couple of days ago. We had about an inch, but nothing like New York, man.
No.
They got a foot that in the Bronx, and I think they're getting 18 inches total.
Wow.
I could do without that. So, you ready for Christmas? Did you break out your gay apparel? You got all your gay apparel?
Pretty funny. That's our friend Derek Harris there giggling in the background.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, you are on. Good. Well, today we got a very special guest. We got a New York Times bestselling author and 11-time Emmy Award winner Armen Keteyian. Armen will join us in a little while, but first we're going to do our usual Christmas merriment. Whatever that is.
Gay apparel.
Christmas merriment, huh?
I'm in my gay apparel, black shirt.
I was listening to old Christmas songs yesterday to try and get in the mood, and I was thinking, what does that mean anyway? Now we all are gay apparel. I said, these things are a little dated.
Well, I'm sure ho 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 had a whole different meaning to you.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what Santa's relationships with the reindeer is. You got to overthink everything nowadays,
Yeah, for sure. So
you wonder, Rudolph probably didn't get that big red nose in an ice cream parlor. He probably had a couple of fools.
Pretty fun. I'm moving around. I'm trying to. I got this glare in the background. I just want to try to get it out of the picture. That's if I stay right there, it's out of the picture.
Yeah, you look like a black guy running for governor in Mississippi. Just keep moving.
Why you gotta?
Somebody by future.
Why you gotta be like that?
He's just speaking facts.
Yeah.
Just speaking facts. Derek knows. He knows about Ole Miss.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. So, what do you got on the agenda for this weekend? You got all your shopping done?
What, are you kidding me? Excuse me a second. My wife wants to get in on the podcast.
Tell her if she wants to butt in, she's got to be on camera.
Yeah, she says in the background, he doesn't shop. Like she's gonna kibitz. She likes the kibitz. It's a good thing we're not playing gin.
Kibitz?
Kibitz. She's a kibitz.
Is that the same as kibitz?
I guess.
Stop moving around. You're making me nervous, for Christ's sake.
What a guy dodging and ducking. That's why I made the crack about Mississippi. No, man, I made a deal with my kids a long time ago about 5 years ago. I said, here's the deal. Don't buy me nothing. I don't buy you nothing. Let's put away all that nonsense, and I just take care of the grandkids. It's all about children, ain't it really?
Yeah, but every day's Christmas for those kids.
Yeah, to an extent, but
they are with my house.
Well, I love breaking my grandkids' chops. Like I tell the older one is 7, and the younger one is only 4. And I was at a store last year when I went into New York. I stopped to get some more gifts for them, even though I had already spoiled them. And I saw this big lump of coal, and I said, "Oh, okay, I got to get a lump of coal. I got to play with them, And I said, I gave it to Nevin, who was the smaller one. And I said, here you go. Look what Grandpa got you for Christmas. Coal.
He was probably like, what is
I don't want coal. I want presents. Presents. I said, no, you like coal. So she just looks at me like this. She goes, this is another one of those grandpa tricks. She goes, I'm so tired of your grandpa tricks. I said, well, I can't fool you anymore. You're too smart now. I said, but I can probably still fool Nevin. She says, oh, you can definitely fool Nevin. It's great. I mean, it's all about the kids. It's just great. I miss them so much not being able to go into New York,
Yeah.
and do it for Christmas.
You could
And the older they get, Frank, the more fun they become. You're going to find that out with little Frankie.
you could go into New York today, that's for sure. They got tons of snow.
Yeah. And besides that, my daughter is an environmental biologist. She would quarantine me before COVID came up. She was like, I mean, she's like, what do they call it? Anal retentive. Like, I couldn't even look at my phone or check my messages if I was in the room with my grandchildren. She was like, no electronics, no this, no that. She just shut it down. But it worked out, because they're both avid readers, which I love, and well, you never know. I mean, who knows?
I give you credit. You did a great job with your kids.
Well, I didn't do much. The best thing I did for my kids was leave.
Well, you followed in your own footsteps.
I didn't expose any of my idiosyncrasies and my madness. My wife took care of all of that, All I did was send money, I mean, I listen. I mean, my kids love me, and I love my kids, and I have a great relationship with them. And I'm not taking a bow for financially supporting them. You don't take a bow for what you're supposed to do. I mean, that's like taking a bow for breathing or walking. But I do have a good relationship with my kids. I'm fortunate, really, because my wife did a great job raising them. Really. I was, you know what? You
Really?
I mean, you have a great relationship with Erin. Obviously, she named your grandchild after you, so I know you got a great relationship with her. But you were out making a buck more than when you're 35, 40, you're out there making a buck. You don't have the time to be hanging around with the kids all the time as much as you like. I mean, you're there, but you're not there as much as you could be with your grandkids,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And you also get the great privilege of playing with them, laughing with them, and then saying, all right, well, I got to get out of here now. And take care of it.
Yeah.
Take care of this. So, it's great. I mean, I think for those of you that don't have grandchildren and you're too young to have grandchildren, you're in for, I mean, it's the greatest. It's even better than being a parent. It's great. It's wonderful.
It is better than being a parent. It is truly great. Better, for sure. Hey, so do you have a tall tale that goes around a Christmas-themed tall tale?
Tall tale and a Christmas theme. Let me see if I can think of a Christmas theme for a tall tale.
Maybe with some gay apparel.
I don't know about, my cousin from Ireland, he married a girl from Pennsylvania. And he used to come over here all the time for Christmas. And I guess about 2 years ago, he told me that he was so pleasantly surprised that New York had changed so much. He went to school over here in Worcester, Massachusetts. And he told me that he was so surprised that everybody in New York, around Christmas time, were very polite. New York has this rap about us being,
Rude.
Rude. I mean, absolutely rude. Like, I remember the old joke of a British guy, a guy from London, supposedly walked up to a guy in the street and he says, pardon me. Could you possibly tell me the train I have to take to Grand Central Station? Or should I just go fuck myself? Because, I mean, that's the rap that we get. I used to do a bit on stage about, and this is a true story. I guess about 3 years ago, I was coming into New York for Christmas to count the kids, make sure I'm paying for the right amount with the grandkids and everything else, see what's up, because I only got to come in twice a year. And of course, as soon as you come into New York, you land at the airport, you rent a car, you go to pick up the car, you check your mirrors, you adjust the seats, and then you make sure both middle fingers are malleable, because you really can't drive in New York unless those two middle fingers are working, So, of course, I get out of the airport, and the Van Wyck is insane. I mean, it's traffic everywhere because I was living in Phoenix and I wasn't used to what New York is like, the nightmare. And I'm trying to get over the Troggs Neck Bridge, and that's impassable. So I pass it up, and I go to the Whitestone Bridge, and that's backed up. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to take the Triborough. I'll go up to Deegan, and I'll get to where I got to go. And I get to the Triborough Bridge. I finally get over to Triborough. I get on to Major Deegan, and it's like a parking lot. I mean, bumper to bumper. Now I'm in the middle lane, and I got one chance to get off at 138th Street. Right? If I don't get off here, I could die in this traffic. I mean, they could find me 40 years from now stuck in this traffic. That's how bad it is. So I got to get in the right-hand lane, but I'm a native New Yorker. I know the deal. I can't put on an indicator because I'm a native. That's a sign of weakness, right? So what I do is I put the left-hand blinker on. Now, the guy in the left-hand lane, as soon as he sees that blinker, he's going to take the 6 inches out of those 2 bumpers, but you couldn't get a quarter in there, right? He's just going to tighten up because there's no way I'm getting in. So now I put the window down, and this is how you do it if you're a native New York. You start beeping a horn. You start screaming, you Mook, you son of a bitch, I'm trying to get in the left-hand lane. What the hell's the matter with you? But what I'm really doing is I'm looking in the rearview mirror at the guy in the right-hand lane where I really want to go. And, of course, this son of a bitch, he's sitting back. He's smiling, and he's just delighted with my dilemma, right? And as soon as he relaxes, I swerve into the right-hand lane and shoot him a finger.
Well, that's a great lead into a piece that I'm going to show you because it is Christmas time. And Christmas time was famous. David Letterman was famous for having my good pal on, Jay Thomas. And Jay Thomas would tell him a classic Lone Ranger story every year on David Letterman. So if Derek is ready, why don't you play that tape? It's about a 4-minute tape with David Letterman. You can keep Billy and my mic open if you want. If you can't, you can close them. But I think everybody would like this to see and remain in the Christmas tradition.
Quarterback challenge. The story about you working for a small radio station in a southern town.
That's right. That's right. And I had told this story only privately.
It's the best story I've ever heard.
And it was Christmas about 10 or 12 years ago. And I come out with my little story planned. And you said, give me a gift. And I said, what is it? Tell me this story about you and the Lone Ranger. And I had never told it publicly. So I worked for a small radio station. It was actually big in the area. Big Ways, it was called, W-A-Y-S. And we would open the car dealerships. And back then, I was one of the few white guys with an afro. I had the big, giant afro. And we would open the car dealership. And so a guy named Pickle Moore. Pickle Moore, we have a picture, by the way, of Pickle Moore with the Lone Ranger. This picture's never been shown before. Yeah. That's Pickle, that's the Lone Ranger, and that's the car dealership. That's a used Dodge truck.
There's the Lone Ranger. Clearly
right.
A sense of humor.
Right. Right, that's Pickle Moore. His daughter sent that to us, so I want to thank her. I know her name is Sweet Relish. I don't know what her last name is. But... So I go to the thing, and I'm talking and doing the remote and come down and get an oil change and buy a truck and the whole thing. And the Lone Ranger is there, and the kids are coming, and he's got the guns and everything else. My friend Mike Martin, who's in the record industry, he comes to visit me, and he's got the long, long hair and the big stacked heels and the tight jeans like a Bay City roller. And so he gets me, and we go out to the dumpster, and we begin to get herbed up. We become medicinally enhanced as the performance.
We only hear that phrase "herbed up" once a year.
Once a year.
Once a year. We all look forward to herbed up.
Herbed up once a year.
That's a lovely tradition.
That's right. So as I keep going back and forth, we're more and more herbal. So so we do it. We're there for hours, and it's time to leave, and no one comes to get Clayton Moore, the Lone Ranger, and to take him back to the Red Carpet Inn on Moorhead Avenue. So we wait a while, and no one comes. The sales manager was drunk. I don't know what happened. Pickle Moore had left. I don't know what was going on. So I said, well, we'll take you back. And
Lone Ranger all dressed up, just as in the photo.
Just with the guns and the whole thing, and the
mask.
never takes it off.
Yeah.
Never relaxes. Nothing. So I have a 10-year-old Volvo, okay? And it's all beat up. And there's like, fast food crap in the back of it and everything else. And we put the Lone Ranger in. And Mike and I get in there. And all we're thinking is we can't act stoned. So we... And my hair is so big, and he's got so much hair, he can't see out of the front window because it's like Starsky and Hutch are in the front with it. And we are looking straight ahead. And we are so nervous, and we get in this traffic. It's not moving. No one is saying a word. It's dead silent in my Volvo. And this middle-aged guy in a Buick in the front of us doesn't like the traffic. He decides to back up, crashes into my car. I hear my headlight break.
Oh.
And we look around, and he drives away. And there's that pause that stoned people have before they react. And so we decide to chase the guy in my Volvo. The Volvo has 5 cylinders, right? So I get out of traffic, and we're chasing the Buick. We can't, and the Lone Ranger is in the back, completely stoic. I swear to God. So we catch up to the guy. We can see him, he's a middle-aged guy. We pull in front of him, right in front of Anderson's Seafood Restaurant. I swear to God, it's all there. And Mike and I jump out, and he says, "What are you guys doing?" I said, "You backed into my car, and you broke my headlight." He says, "I did not." I said, "Yes, you did." He says, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to call the cops." He says, "Oh, really? Well, who do you think they're going to believe? You two hippie freaks or me?" And the Lone Ranger gets out of the back of my car. And I swear to God, he goes like this: "They'll believe me, citizen." I swear to God. Thank you.
That's so good. Oh, man. That is so good.
The best part of that is the way David Letterman is squealing and howling throughout the entire piece. It's a great, great story.
It's a great story, and he tells it so well. And it's no wonder that Letterman's laughing because, the way Jay Thomas tells that story, and again, the true stories are always the funniest stories, and there's no way in the world you can make something like that up. It's just a great story.
Oh, and Jay was my best friend. He passed away 2 or 3 years ago, and I miss him greatly. But this is a way to keep his memory alive for a little bit.
Well, that's great. That he left quite a legacy, Jay Thomas. So, both in film and on the radio.
Yeah.
I found out a lot more about him writing Lips because of you, of course, and your relationship with him than I ever would have known about him. And pretty fascinating guy.
I met Jay 50 years ago, and every day and every day was another laugh with him. And another person who I've had a lot of laughs with, who also has a relationship with Jay Thomas, was my good friend Armen Keteyian, because I've known Armen for 40 years. He's a New York Times best-selling author and 11-time Emmy Award winner. And now let's introduce Armen.
Yeah, again, because of the podcast and my newfound relationship with you, I'm getting to meet a lot of interesting people and doing some research on Armen. Wow, just wow. So I'm really looking forward to meeting you.
Great. Okay, Derek.
Okay, we're up.
We're up? Billy, we're up.
Well, yeah, I tell you, it's great, Frank. For our audience, we're really lucky today. An old friend of yours and a terrific investigative journalist. Armen has
11-time Emmy Award winner, like we said.
3 bestsellers, I believe. 11 books, Armen, is that right?
That's right. 3 New York Times bestsellers, I think. Let me look. Hold on a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, actually.
4.
Yeah.
4 bestsellers.
4.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
And corrected.
That's all right.
Fantastic. And
it's nice.
I'm sorry, Frank. Go ahead.
It's nice to have you on, Armen. We just showed the clip of Jay Thomas on Letterman, and why don't you tell a little about your history with Jay?
Well, my history with Jay goes back to you, Frank. So I guess we should do the, tell the true story right up front. Is that you and I have known each other for 40 plus years. I worked with you in San Diego when you were my boss at the Phillips organization, which was a sports marketing PR firm in San Diego. And in 1982, I left San Diego to go to New York to work for Sports Illustrated at the age of 29, making the grand total of $27,000 a year during the David Dinkins era in New York, which was not pleasant.
By the way, you almost doubled your salary.
Yes, yeah, you were the cheapest bastard, I'll tell you that, when it came to paying people. Didn't that stay true in Hollywood too? Everybody says, you don't want to get one of Pace's productions. You're going to make about a half of what you really deserve. That's not true. But your best friend was Jay, and at the time, Jay was like the precursor to Howard Stern in New York. He was the shock jock in New York City, the biggest DJ, really one of the biggest in the country. And I remember you saying, you could stay at Jay's house for a few days because my wife, Dee Dee, and our youngest daughter, Kristen, was only 4 months old, and she was not coming to New York. And so at least not originally, right off the bat. So I called Jay up and I said, I'm really good friends with Frank. He was my boss. I guess it's okay if I stay with you. And he goes, well, how long do you think you're going to stay? And I said, well, I think I'm going to stay about 2 weeks. And this long pause. And he goes, yeah, why don't we take it like one day at a time and just see how it goes? And as it turned out, I slept on his couch for about half of those 2 weeks. I slept in my office a couple of days. But I really got to know Jay. He became one of my best friends in New York, Charlie Steiner, who, you certainly know, and now is the voice of the Dodgers. We used to go to Monday Night Football at Jay's house and, hang out. And it was a lot of fun. I miss Jay in so many ways.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Charlie Steiner just appeared in that Bee Gees commercial on HBO.
I know, I saw him. And I just watched the doc. I thought it was great. And
I did too. Did you see it, Billy?
No, not yet, but about 4 people have already recommended it to me. They all said it was a terrific documentary.
Billy, why are you yelling? You're here amongst friends. You don't have to yell.
What do you mean? You can't hear me?
Where are you, Billy? Does your wife have you in the basement? Where are you? Are you outside? What's going on?
Let me blink 3 times. I'm a prisoner here in the basement.
Morse code.
Speaking of HBO documentaries that you didn't see, Armen's got an HBO documentary coming up in January.
It's a big one. It's called Tiger. It's a 3.5 hour 2-part film. Alex Gibney is the overriding creative force, Oscar-winning director. There's 2 principal directors in this, Matt Heineman and Matt Hamachek, and they have done. I've seen the final cut, and it's phenomenal. It really is. It's an hour and a half is Act 1, an hour and 45 is Act 2. They gave us prime real estate on HBO Sunday night at 9, January 10th and January 17th. The word is internally, at least among the HBO people, that if it's not the best, it's one of the best sports docs the network has ever done. And I think it's mesmerizing. It's really intimate. There's a lot of big names in it. There's some surprises in it as far as people in Tiger's life. We're really proud. It was inspired by the book that made the #1 New York Times bestseller. A lot of, I think, the architecture of the film and the beats in the film and the narratives, themes in the film are based on a lot of the reporting that Jeff Benedict and I did for Tiger Woods, our book. So I'm an executive producer, Frank. You'll like that. You know what that means.
Yep.
Jeff and I was surprised. We were able to give a lot of input to principally Matt Hamachek, who was the director that I spent the most time with. He would call and say, what do you think about this? Or how do we, talk to this person to try to get them to agree to be interviewed? And it was a great experience just to see it go from basically an idea to a rough cut, to a fine cut, to a final cut. It's really a phenomenal film, and
I'm looking forward to see it. I know that Billy adores writers. No, I'm serious. He's very well written, very well spoken.
he's a very good writer.
He is a very good.
Coming from you, that's really.
That's very good. I've read both of your books now, and you know that. And If These Lips Could Talk, and the other one that's coming up on the AFL NFL merger, and they're very readable, and they're funny, and a way with words. So both of you guys.
Well, why don't you tell Billy a little bit about what some of the things you encountered in writing Tiger Woods? And Billy, if you got any questions, just jump right in, because I'm going to dominate this conversation.
Dominate by all means, but before Armen does tell us about Tiger Woods, let me just say that one of the first rules of journalism, they say, is write what you know, and that's why people should tune in and watch the HBO special on Tiger, because reading Tiger by Armen, some of the reviews from the Wall Street Journal and everything else called it irresistible, immensely readable, comprehensive, propulsive, unsparing, too, unsparing.
Yes.
So, you didn't sugarcoat it. It's the real
No,
thing.
not at all. I mean, my favorite blurb, Dwight Garner, who is the main book critic for the New York Times. I didn't know this at the time, but our agents, there's an office where there's two agents, and I was there the day that the review came out, and I didn't even know it was coming out. Had I known, I probably would have not had the most pleasant night's sleep, but they said, the New York Times reviewed the book today, and I was like, oh my God, how is it? And Dwight Garner, who has probably killed more books than a pandemic in certain ways, he called it a perfectly pitched biography, which was words that if I was writing them myself, I would say that's about as great a praise as you could get from somebody who's as a high level critic as Dwight Garner is. So, it was 3 years of my life. I mean, really, and Jeff's life as well. We knew that in order to do something that was special, it would take us at least a year to just do the reading, and to read all the things and to watch all the press conferences. I mean, I read 385 transcripts of press conferences that Tiger has held over the course of his career, and color coded them to certain specific topics. And so if we were looking for him talking about his dad, we knew it was under the orange colors that we would find in the transcripts. And it took us a year just to do that, and then we started to figure out, okay, we know who's talked. Well, who hasn't talked? What part of Tiger's life were there people that interacted with him, some for only a very short period of time? A woman, for example, whose house he stayed at the Masters for years. We were able to talk to her, and she was a kind of a very critical, vital part in giving her insight into what it was like to deal with Earl and Tiger. So, you spend a year just doing the research, you spend another year doing the reporting, and then between the two of us, we spent the next year writing the book. And, they paid us quite a bit of money to do it, but in the end, we were working for minimum wage. I mean, and just the thousands of hours that we put into the book. And what the arc of Tiger's life is that the book came out in March of 2018. In May of 2017, Memorial Day weekend, he's found on the side of the road in Florida, thinking he's in California. And it's just, you're thinking, and Frank, you guys, Billy, you know this, you're thinking this is the third act. This is how this story ends. And
Billy knows about waking up on the side of the road, not knowing what state he's in. I'll tell you
not
that.
knowing what state he's in, and he's got 5 really high-powered drugs in his system. And you're thinking, this is the tragic ending you really don't want to write. And when the book came out in March of 18, we didn't write the final chapter until the end of January in 2018. I went out to Torrey Pines in San Diego and saw him at the Farmers. He was healthy. He was different. He was more human. He was more engaged. He was more engaging. And I think what happened with him, that episode the public embarrassment, the personal embarrassment, and then his decision to get clean. It was a life altering moment for Tiger. And thank God, for our purposes, it gave us some hope at the end of the book. And, I think I'm paraphrasing, but it said, he was poised to show a new generation of fans and pros just what a living legend looks like. And then he goes out and wins the tour championship in September. And then as the doc ends, he wins the Masters, which is a comeback that's almost, unscriptable in terms of Hollywood endings. So, I'm very, very proud of it. That was the 11th book. And of all the books that I've done, I think that's the most proud I've been of an effort to put into, something like that.
Well, that's why the HBO special, I'm really looking forward to it, because I know the amount of work you had to put into Tiger. And who was, if you don't mind me asking, was the housekeeper the big get? Who was the big get for the book that really?
Well, I think there were a couple of them. The first girlfriend and the first true love of Tiger's life, Dina Gravel, who's now Dina Parr. I went to Dina's house. She lives in Los Angeles, and I knocked on the door, and her husband came to the door, and we talked, and she said she would call me, and then she didn't call me. And I just knew that she was a pivotal part of the book because of what had happened to her in terms of her relationship with Tiger. I mean, she and Tiger, you remember your first true love. I mean, those you don't forget. And, they were in love at that period of time. And then she was just systematically cut out of Tiger's life by Earl and Tita, his parents, because she really was a threat. She was a distraction to Tiger and to the grand plan that Earl and Tita had in place, even when Tiger was at Stanford, when he was going to turn pro. So my writing partner, Jeff Benedict, he just has a way with, I have a way with certain people. Jeff has a way with certain people. He had a way with Dina, and they started to talk and to communicate. And she eventually agreed to be interviewed. And Jeff did all the interviews with Dina. And it was just phenomenal. It was just a huge, huge part of the book. But, we interviewed almost 300 people. And if you're putting a puzzle together, each piece, each interview just forms a piece of the whole mosaic that you're trying to put together. And some people got one page, some people got a couple of lines, some people's names will never show up in the book, never showed up in the book because we promised them anonymity. But in the end, when you're putting that kind of puzzle together and it fits the way it fit, and then the reviews, as you mentioned, Billy, were extraordinary. You just feel like, it's like for you and you guys, when you do a film or you do a pilot and you spend so much time and you devote so much energy into something and then it bombs or it doesn't reach the level that you hoped and expected it would. For us, I don't know how I would have reacted if that book had been a bomb. I mean, when you devote that much time, if it had been ignored.
I'm going to tell you how you would have reacted. You would have picked up and you would have gone on to the next thing. You would have.
It was hard. I mean, it was really hard. I had a hard time because we were coming off the system, which was another really big book, another deep dive into college football. And I really didn't want to do the Tiger book. I was burnt out, and I was at 60 Minutes and at 60 Sports at the time. And I had, I was busy. I mean, I was working my ass off. And I didn't know whether I had it in me. And then, we talked, Jeff and I talked, and I just ultimately just decided, okay, I'm going to jump off another one of these cliffs. And it was a 3-year jump. I mean, in the end, I landed safely, but if I had fallen and just crashed and burned, I don't know how I would have handled it, Frank. I really don't.
Let me ask you another question. Earl Woods gets a lot of the credit, but who played a bigger role in his development, Earl or Tita?
I think they both did. I think Earl was the one who really showed Tiger the love of the game, the passion that Tiger has for the game, his ability to see shots that is unlike almost any golfer in history, I think. And that ability to grind and to practice, that was Earl. So that part of Tiger's brain, that emotional side and the hard work and all that was Tiger. Tita gave him the killer instinct, no question. She was the one that said, when you beat them in a way that they never forget. You put your foot on their neck and you don't let go. And, you know, if you go back into Tiger's amateur career, he played some big time amateur players who, after Tiger came back, particularly in the U.S. amateurs and the junior amateurs, when he beat them, oftentimes coming from behind to beat them, you know, their amateur careers, they never went professional, or they had a very difficult time when they did turn pro, if they did turn pro. So that killer instinct, Tiger, you know, when Tiger beat you, he beat you in a way that you didn't forget. And that was Tita. That was Tita in the car when she was driving him to all the tournaments, and she was driving him back and forth to the Navy course every day where he would practice for hours on end. She was the one in his ear saying, basically, you know, you're not just going to beat them and they'll think that they can beat you down the line. You beat them where they think they can never beat you.
Wow. Why do you think the serial infidelity was such a big deal with the public? Why was that such a, I mean, in this age of like alternative facts, I mean, why was that such a huge deal with the public that they...
Well, Billy, remember, Tiger created an image, and that was created for him and by his people, that he was in many ways Mr. Perfect. You know, he was the perfect corporate spokesperson. He had the perfect home life. Tiger, when he was interviewed, would talk about how much, you know, he and Elin were in love with each other. And it was a well manicured image that they had created. And frankly, I don't think anybody outside of Tiger's inner circle maybe knew what he was doing outside of his marriage. I've often believed, not often, I do believe that people's personal lives are their personal lives. If you're a celebrity or an athlete, whatever you do away from the field of play is your own business. But when you do something that puts you in the public eye, like Tiger did when he hit that fire hydrant on Thanksgiving night in 2009, and that blows up into a absolute tabloid hurricane, then you're kind of fair game in the way the world is now. I mean, had this happened 20 years ago, when there was maybe one or two or three outlets that would even consider running those kinds of stories, but when you have TMZ and you have Entertainment Tonight and you have the talk shows and you have the National Enquirer and you have so many so-called media outlets now that this is like rocket fuel to them. And it just took on a life of its own. I can't remember a prominent athlete, a star of stars like he was, having a fall from grace. And you'll see that in the doc. It's extraordinary. I mean, from Howard Stern to late night television to The View, it's really cringeworthy at a time. When you're watching it, you're like, oh my God, this guy was just crucified. And it was crucified, he was crucified for other people's entertainment. And that's what, to me, is when you fall into that chasm, it's hard to get out. And the fact that he crawled his way out of that and into the light, to me is, I mean, after that, what happened, as I mentioned, in May of 2017, to be as low as Tiger was, to crawl out of that hole, back into the light, forget whether he won a tournament or not, but just to be a functioning human being again, to be the kind of father he's become, that's extraordinary to me, because so many people, I mean, Frank, you know, from Hollywood, all these child stars that never make it out of that hole.
Yep.
He did. And he did it in a way that's been extraordinarily inspiring to a lot of people.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the HBO documentary. I don't want to take up this whole interview just by talking about Tiger Woods, because you've been notable in your career. So why don't I just throw out some names and you'll comment on them?
Okay.
So first name I'll throw out will be Vince McMahon.
There's the story. Well, people have. That's probably my claim to fame on YouTube is the Vince McMahon interview. It took place at the WWE headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut. We knew they were taping us. We were taping them, obviously. They had already threatened to sue us at Real Sports. I knew going in that it was going to be confrontational. And all I wanted to do was to not allow Vince to get the upper hand. And I had the facts. That's the thing about when you go into these interviews. I worked and contributed to 60 Minutes for almost 10 years. Preparation is everything. And that's always been a big deal for me. It's like I'm really well prepared when I go into those interviews. And it's not the first answer. It's not the second answer. Oftentimes, it's not the third answer. It's the fourth question, and you're waiting for the fourth answer. And with Vince, that's what it was. I just kept going like this in narrowing it down to the fact that he was not going to take any responsibility for the deaths of all these wrestlers under the age of 45 who had worked for him in various capacities over the years, most from drugs, some from steroids, some from just, heart attacks and all these different things. And it was, and Vince, to put it lightly, did not take it well. And he flipped it on the papers, you could see it in his face. I literally thought he was going to jump out of the chair. I really did. I thought it was going to be one of those things where I'm going back into the turnbuckle, but we didn't say goodbye to each other. It wasn't.
He's intimidating too, isn't he?
It was basically fuck you, and I'll see you later. So but I didn't feel bad about it because I knew that I was fair with him. And in the end, it made for a great television segment.
Okay, I'll give you another name, Jerry Colangelo.
Oh, Frank, you're just bringing up all the old hits. So, Jerry Colangelo, I'm doing a story about the building of the Bank One ballpark for Real Sports. Matt Morant's the producer. Building of the Bank One ballpark in Arizona, in Phoenix. Jerry people know he was the head of the Phoenix Suns, but he was also the general manager of the group that was building the ballpark. And a lot of people in Phoenix wanted to know, how much money is Jerry Colangelo making on this business deal as the general partner of this group that was putting the money together to build the ballpark? Well, that was the Holy Grail. Somebody sent me the partnership agreement, and in the agreement, it said that he was going to make, if my memory serves, 3% of the overall gross, the annual gross of the ballpark, and turned out to be about $80 million. And I did the math very quickly in front of Jerry. Jerry didn't like it when I told him I had read the partnership agreement. So this look came over his face like, this isn't going to go well. The kicker of the story is, he goes, we were getting along very well. And then he goes, well, because we had crossed swords on a Phoenix Suns point shaving scandal when I was at Sports Illustrated. So his final words to me were, well, you were an asshole then and you're an asshole now. And he got up and he walked out of the interview. Well, he walked out, but then he realized he was walking out of his own office. So I'm sitting in a chair in Jerry's office when he walks out, and then he realizes he's walked out of his own office. He walks in and he goes, get the F out of here. You're in my office. It dawned on him, that I was, and I said, look, I've been known to do, I'm a tough interviewer. I know that, but I'm respectful, and I'm not in it to make a name for myself. I was always in it to help the audience understand to the greatest degree I could what was going on in a particular story, whether it was a profile piece, whether it was an investigative piece, whether it was a business piece, I was going to get to the bottom of it as much as I could in a respectful manner. But I think sometimes over the years, people think they're smarter than you are, or that I'm not going to be prepared for the interview, or that I'm going to be afraid to ask that third or fourth question. And I'm not going to be afraid to do that. And I haven't been, but I've done it in a way that's respectful to the other person. But if you want to kind of toe it up and go head toe to toe with me, I'll do that just as I did with Vince McMahon, and I did it with Lance Armstrong. I've done it with a lot of people, but I can play that. I can play those chords any way you want to play them. I can be very understanding, but I can be not so understanding, because in the case of the Phoenix Suns, or in the case of the Bank One Ballpark, that was taxpayer money. I wasn't speaking on behalf of Armen Keteyian. I was speaking on behalf of the taxpayers of Maricopa County, because they wanted to know how much Jerry Coangelo was making.
Right. So the next name on my list was Lance Armstrong.
Lance Armstrong. I think he's one of the most remarkable athletes I've ever seen in my life. I covered 5 Tour de France for CBS. That was the anchor of their 3 back-to-back broadcasts, hour-long segments that won a bunch of Emmys. He's a complicated man, just like Tiger Woods, very complicated. I knew Lance right when he had just gotten cancer, and he was in Austin recovering. That's the first time I interviewed him, when I was at ABC News as a correspondent. Look, the tour was it was full of drugs. You had to almost. You can understand why they were doing it, because you really can't go 2,100 miles on a bike at the pace that they were doing over 4 and 5 mountain ranges in a day without having something to help you recover. Lance's problem was he always denied it and crucified people that brought it up. I would always do the final interview with Lance on the Friday before he would come to Paris and ride in the parade for Champs-Élysées for the coronation. And every year I'd ask him the same question, 5 years in a row. Lance, so-and-so came forward and said they saw you do this and that and the other thing. And I get pretty much the same answer all the time. I've never failed a drug test. I've never failed a drug test. They can say what they want, but I've never failed a drug test. Well, history will show that, Lance was lying to my face. But in those days, I didn't, Frank, I didn't have a smoking gun. There wasn't like I could hold up a piece of paper and say, I've got an affidavit here from so-and-so that said they injected you with this, that, and the other thing. So I had to ask the question, but you can only go so far in those situations. And being respectful to Lance, and, I saw him do supernatural things. Alpe d'Huez, which is this 9-mile last ride, where if you're driving in your car, you can't get your car to first gear up this mountain. That's how steep it is, 9% grade for 9 miles. And I saw him just turn on the turbojet and pass people, and you just go, that's just not humanly possible. And Lance was probably he reminds me so much of Tiger. They're perfectionists. He had the best bike, he had the best people, he had the best doctors, but he also had the best work ethic. He outworked people just like Tiger did. So anybody else in this rogues gallery, Frank, that you want to bring up?
Isaiah Thomas.
Oh, God. I'm going to take a pass on that one, buddy.
Okay. So you're also responsible for giving us One Shining Moment, the NCAA theme song when the teams win. Why don't you tell us a little about that story?
That's well, thank you very much. That's a softer side of me. I'm in New York. I'm at Sports Illustrated at the time, but I'm looking around. I'm talking to NBC. I'm talking to CBS. I'm thinking about going into television if I can get in. And Dave Barrett, who is still to this day one of my very best friends, who wrote the lyrics and everything that responsible, the music for One Shining Moment. He he was coming to New York and doing gigs in New York, singer-songwriter. He goes, hey, I've got this song, I wrote it. I think it's really pretty good. It's on a cassette tape, right? So I stick it in the old cassette tape recorder, and it's got this piano prelude to it that's unbelievable. Dave's a great piano player. And then, I hear the ball is tipped. There you are. You're running for your life. You're a shooting star. All these years, no one knows just how much you've worked, and now it shows. I'm thinking about it, and I go, oh my God. So I take it across the street to CBS to a guy by the name of Bob Tassi. And they, lo and behold, were looking for a theme song for the Super Bowl. And they wanted the song, but they knew they had it. They didn't know quite where they wanted to play it. So Bob plays it in his office on the cassette tape recorder. And literally, when I'm in there, people from all these other offices are coming into Bob's office going, what is this? This is a great song. I can't believe it. So he plays the whole thing. Everybody's, thrilled as can be. And lo and behold, because the Super Bowl runs long, they don't run it until the Final Four. And it has become the signature song, I think, in sports. I don't think, other than Queen, We Are the Champions, One Shining Moment's at the top of the list. And I was fortunate enough to do 7 Final Fours for CBS, one of which was when Michigan State won in 2000. Dave had gone to Michigan State. He was there. Tom Izzo has become a very good friend of mine, a close friend over the last 20 years. He's on the floor. Mateen Cleaves, who was obviously his point guard, who was just the MVP of the Final Four when State won, when he was growing up in Flint, he would play that song on the court when he would be working on the playgrounds and just practicing his game. He'd have that song in his head, and he was singing it. And there he is on the court. They've just won. I'm standing next to him. They both got tears in their eyes. And I'm looking up on the big screen, and there's one of my dear friends. His song is playing. So, I think I don't know, whenever my obit is written, I think maybe that makes like the 3rd, 4th paragraph of, I was responsible, truth be told, I was responsible for getting that on CBS. And, to this day, it's still there. And that's amazing to think it's been there for 30 plus years.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you something also that should be in your obit 25 years from now. You developed an Olympic sport, a short course triathlon champion. And
you did it. I helped.
Well, no. You should be in the Triathlon Hall of Fame along with what the heck? Who are those 2 guys that Carl Thomas and
Jim Curl.
Jim Curl. You should be right there alongside them because you were integral to that process. And for that sport to be an Olympic sport, what year did we launch it? We launched it in '81, and I was there, but I wasn't really there. I was just supervising.
It's amazing, that sport changed my life in a couple of different ways. One, I'm lifelong friends with Scott Tinley, who won 2 of the Ironman and is one of my dear friends. But long story short, when I was offered a job, when I was at the Phillips organization with you in 1982, it was January or February 1982. I had been sending all my clips back to Sports Illustrated. I had been badgering them for a year or more to see if I could get a job as a reporter. I wanted to work at the magazine. I wanted to test myself against the best of the best. So they call me, and in those days, the magazine's masthead barely changed at all. If somebody left that magazine, it was once every 3 or 4 years. So there's an opening for a reporter. They call me, and they said, we'd like to offer you a job. And I said, well, I'd love to take it, but let me just check with my wife. And Frank, Dee Dee and I have been married for now 41 years. She was 8 months pregnant at the time when they offered me the job. It's February in San Diego, and it's February in New York City. And you can't take this job. You can't take it. I'm not moving to New York City 8 months pregnant. I'm not doing it. She had a great job in San Diego with a convention in an event planning company. We had a house in North Park, 2 dogs, 2 cars. We had the whole life going. And so I had to turn it down. And I was like, I don't know how many people have turned jobs down from Sports Illustrated, but you can probably count them on the fingers of one hand. So a month later, they call back. April, they call back. And they said, we've had another opening. We're going to offer you this job one more time, but we're not going to ask again. And there's no third time. Getting back to the triathlon story, what changed it for me, I wrote a story on Julie Moss, who, as we all remember, was remarkable in that 82 women's triathlon, the Ironman, where she crawled across the finish line and was brought to New York with Kathleen McCartney, who actually won the race. They were on Wide World of Sports with Jim McKay. I wrote, I think to this day, the longest feature story that's ever run in the San Diego Union. Had to be 3,000 words long. And I'm going to do one thing. Where is it? So this book comes in the mail, Best Sports Stories, 1983. It's from 1982. And it comes with a $250 check. And I'm like, wow, I made it into the Best Sports Stories of 1982 in this 83 book. And I go through the book and I can't find it. And then I go to the page where it says prize-winning stories right here. And I look, the Julie Moss story won the best feature story of the year by the judges in this book. I'll give you the names of the other 3 guys that won. Thomas Boswell of the Washington Post, writing about the Orioles. John Schulian, who's one of the great all-time columnists for the Chicago Sun-Times. He writes something. And then John Underwood from Sports Illustrated writes the classic Don Reese story about how cocaine came into his life. And here's some schmuck from the San Diego Union with Julie Moss found ecstasy after losing to agony. Well, that changed my life in a lot of ways because it opened the door at SI again. And then, which opened the door for ABC News and CBS Sports and a bunch of other things going down the line. So
let me ask you, didn't you also have another article appear in that Sporting News?
I did.
What was that?
Art Schleister.
Well, not only Schleister. I think also our Art was in it. But didn't you have your Pete Gray story appear in the Sporting News?
It wasn't in the Best Sports Stories. It was in another. It was in another anthology that it made it in there, and that's. Which one should I tell first, Frank? The Art Schleister, where he showed up when we did the Olympia Gold Bowl together. And
why don't you tell that Art story first for Billy's edification?
So Billy,
You know all of the Art Schleister story, that's for sure.
So Art Schleister was just a gambling addict. We didn't know it at the time, but he had a really big gambling problem. But he was the biggest name in college football. And Frank had been responsible with this beer company called Olympia Gold to do the Olympia Gold Bowl in San Diego, which was, to this day, somebody should write a story about that because it was the most amazing one-time college all-star game I'd ever seen in my life. Marcus Allen played in that game. Art Schleister played in that game. Mike Pagel, every major college football star. It was like the East-West game, except it was in San Diego. Art Schleister, only Frank could do this, flew Art Schleister in on a private plane. He plays half the game, gets on a plane, on this private plane back to Columbus, wins the MVP, right, Frank?
He won the MVP, and we gave him a car to come in. So he left with 2 cars.
He left with the MVP car and the car that Frank basically gave him under the table or above the table so he would come to the game. You had Dick Vermeil as one of the coaches and Tom Flores as the other coach. They were the returning Super Bowl coaches.
And who is the commissioner? George Allen.
Yeah. Who?
George Allen.
George Allen. I mean, it was just this crazy week. And I mean, I'll just tell one really quick story. I go out to San Diego Stadium. Dick Vermeil's got this team practicing. They're warming up. He's got Marcus Allen, Roy Foster. He's got the kind of like the creme de la creme of college football players. And they're in San Diego, and all they're thinking about is, I'm just going to have a good time. I'm going to stretch a little bit. I'm going to play on Saturday, and that's it. Vermeil draws them all together. They get in a circle, and they have a blocking drill. And these guys and it's raining out, and it's muddy, and they're worried about getting injured. And there's the mumbling and the grumbling starts. And there's scouts that are circling this whole, it's like the Oklahoma drill. That's what they're doing. And Marcus Allen comes up and says something to Coach Vermeil, like, Coach, you're going to have a mutiny here. People are going to walk out of this thing. Vermeil draws the whole team together, and he goes, men, look around. You see all these people around this circle? That's the National Football League. Your future is in their hands. These are the scouts that are going to determine your future. Now, what do you think they want to see today? You think they want to see you stretch? No, they want to see what kind of football player you are. And these guys were like, all right, that sounds great. So I saw the most intense practice I've ever seen in my life. So that was Art Schleister. What was the other one, Frank?
Well, I just want to say before we go on that Tom Flores was the coach of the other team, and I believe this year Tom will get his long overdue entry into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Because
what a good man. I mean, those were two of the nicest. I mean, Dick Vermeil, just great men, to be around. So now, what was the other one, Frank? You had Schleister, and then
I'll skip over the other one, but
okay.
I want to just jump to what I think for one of the proudest moments of my life for you was the day you appeared on 60 Minutes for the first time.
Yeah.
What did that feel like?
Well, it was kind of otherworldly. If you look around here, there's a picture right here. I think I could maybe show it to you. Well, there it is. Hold on. No, where are you? Right there. That's Jack Garcia, right there in that picture. That's the first story. The FBI's wise guy. Jack was a Cuban American who was portraying himself as an Italian American, and infiltrated one of the major crime families in New York City. I did a 3-hour interview with Jack, not far from, I'm in Fairfield, Connecticut, probably 5 minutes from here at a restaurant called Paciana. And it was a Monday. They had closed the restaurant for us. And that's just, I don't know. It's life altering. It's the top of the mountain. It's, I mentioned before, it's the best of the best. And the fact that, so many people want to work for 60 Minutes, so few people get to work for 60 Minutes. It's as intense an environment as I've ever been in my life. It's not for the faint of heart. You have to be at the top of your game. I consider myself, I'm a very good television writer. I'm a very good interviewer. I'm a very good reporter. But the single most important quality at 60 is that interview. That sit-down interview is everything. And understanding how to handle those moments in essentially live television and 2 cameras in real time is an art form. And the Ed Bradleys of the world and the Bob Simons of the world and the Mike Wallaces of the world, I'm just naming a few, were extraordinary at it. And the fact that I contributed 10 pieces over the course of my career at CBS News to that show, that's as proud of I can be of anything I've ever done in my career.
Billy, I've sort of.
No, that's understandable. You guys go way back. I just before, and I have a reverence for journalists. I really do. And doing research for you, you've been called one of our finest investigative journalists, which I think is that should be on your epitaph, if nothing else. And I'm not diminishing your work with sports because it's incredible.
No.
But you've won 3 Emmys for being a bit of a muckraker as well. You know, no sentence pisses me off more than the idea that the press is the enemy of the public. I mean,
Yeah.
no sentence pisses me off more. And I've always said that the press is the enemy of people in power with things to hide.
Well, you're absolutely right. And you know what, Billy? It's a good point because, you know, my career was built in sports until 2006, and then I'm literally coming out of it. I'll never forget. I was at the Indianapolis Colts facility. I had just done an interview with somebody for the NFL Today piece I was going to do that Sunday, and my phone rings, and it was Sean McManus, who was then the president of both CBS News and CBS Sports. It was his assistant, Jen, saying, "Can you hold for Sean?" And that, you know, that can go a couple of ways. You know, that's like when the studio hits. It's like, "Hey, can you hold for Mr. Big?" And I said, he goes, "Armen?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "It's Sean." I'm like, "I know. Sean, what's up?" He goes, "Do you know who Brian Ross is?" And I said, "Well, sure. He's the chief investigative correspondent for ABC News." He goes, "How'd you like to be my Brian Ross?" And I said, "You mean be your chief investigative correspondent on the news side?" And he said, "Yeah." He goes, "I want you to start an investigative unit for us." And, you know, this is 2006. This is on the heels of the Bush National Guard fiasco at CBS News, which took out Dan Rather and just basically crushed the credibility of CBS News for a while. So I was stepping into a bit of a shitstorm. But Sean believed in me. We started the unit. I was responsible for, along with Burt Rudman and then Keith Suma, who was our executive producers, of hiring some terrific producers. You're right, Billy. We won back-to-back Emmys starting in 2008, 9, and 10. One story on the cover-up of the number of suicides that veterans were committing in this country at the time. It was 17 a day. Now it's 21 a day. We did a funky story about, you know, what was in copiers and all the personal information that's held in personal copiers. And then we did an extraordinary story on rape kits in the country and how many, the backlog of rape kits. So it was big boy journalism. And I think that for me personally, it was like a double PhD in television, because I wasn't writing sports anymore where you had, you know, it was a different kind of storytelling with the language you could use and the drama and music and things like that. This was hard-edged verbs, nouns and verbs kind of writing. And I was really proud of the work we did. I covered the Sandusky, sex abuse trial for the network for 17 straight days. I was really proud of the work that I did. And I think that really set me up for the opportunity to work at 60 Minutes, because I showed Jeff Fager that I'd had the chops for it. And thank you for mentioning that, because, you know, there's not that many people, if I could toot my horn very softly for a moment, that have done what I've done in sports and then gone into the probably the most competitive part of the news world, which is investigative reporting at the networks, and, you know, came out with my head held high.
Well, you should be proud of that. I mean, you're following a long line of Upton Sinclairs and Sinclair Lewis and Lincoln Steffens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're digging, and you're getting to the truth, and you're exposing really important stories. And not that the sports stories aren't fantastic, but I think that you should take a bow for that. That's incredible work, man.
Well, it's so hard, and I think what we're seeing now with where the government is, and it's becoming more and more difficult to really break news in a big way. And I think what we've seen with most recently with ProPublica, CNN, CBS, certainly 60, it's expensive too. That's the other thing. I mean, it's high wire journalism. The expense that it costs, the time that it takes, and the risks that are involved. And a lot of news organizations have shied away from that for those very reasons. And I give CBS News a lot of credit. I give certainly 60 Minutes and CNN. As I mentioned, ProPublica, the New York Times. It's not for the it's a when you go in, you got to go in with both feet. I've been on a high wire for a long time. It's a little lower these days as I get older, but I was on a high wire for a long time, and fingers crossed, by the grace of God, I didn't fall. And it was a long way down sometimes.
I just want to say, for the record, one of the first things that Armen said when he read the first pass of our book, he said, I don't know who wrote it, but whoever said I was writing, covering sports on page 9 of an 8-page sports section for the Escondido. It was Billy O'Connor who wrote that line.
Yeah, I got to tell you something. You guys are a nice collaboration because Frank's got a lot of stories. Billy, you got a great way with words. Frank can turn a phrase. There's some of the stuff in These Lips Could Talk where I literally had to put the book down and go, I can't believe I just read that. There's no bullshit in some of those things. You're just telling it like it is, and it's refreshing to read it that way.
Well, I didn't tell this to Billy because I didn't want his head to get blown out. After you read it, I think you were a little high when I called you, Armen.
I wouldn't know anything about that, Frank.
I said, hell, I want you guys to write my biography.
Oh God. Well, yours is. I got to tell you something. That, and I didn't know. I didn't know whether you could pull off, Lamar's story, because I didn't know whether there was enough there. But then when I read the reporting and I read, because I kind of followed that Carol Rosenblum story pretty closely in a lot of ways, and I just thought that it was really entertaining. Both books to me have been really entertaining, and I read all the time. I'm always reading. And so if you can hold my attention, I've got probably shelves of books here that I've started and I didn't finish because I just wasn't engaged. I was engaged all the way through on both of them.
Well, that's nice of you to say.
I'm reading it right here. You sent this thing to me. I'm just reading it right in front of
well, the mere fact that you would read what I wrote you.
It's very good.
Well, Stephen King said, if you don't have time to read, you don't have time to write.
That's right.
You're a writer, you better read.
I don't know about you, Billy, but I learned to write by reading. I read all the time growing up. Little known fact, I read the most books of any boy at East Hills Junior High School in the 8th grade. Now, all of them were sports books, but you had those little cards that the librarian would fill out when you took the book out.
I remember that.
I probably had 20 of those stapled together because I love to read, and when you read, that just gave me the love of writing. And when you're talking about if you don't read, I find it hard to believe that you can be a very good writer, because I think you have to see, you have to absorb what other people have written in order to find your own style.
Yes, and of course, like you said, you have to read, and the more you read, the better writer you're going to be. And there's an old adage that says that good writers borrow and great writers steal. And I steal, but I steal verbs. I read differently now than I ever read before. I look for verbs. I read your stuff and I look for your verbs. I'm always looking for verbs, and I'm looking to steal verbs. I'm stealing.
Well, if you want to steal verbs, listen to Mike Emmerich call a hockey game. You talk about verbs. That guy, he can. Something it's swizzled, it's tucked, it's turned, it's twisted, it's pushed, it's prodded. It's all of these different ways to describe a hockey game. There's a reason he's won a gazillion Emmys, because he is the best play-by-play guy, I think, in the business.
Well, there's a reason you've won 11 Emmys, and probably going to win a 12th for Tiger. Thanks so much for joining us today. You've had a terrific career, a terrific life, been a terrific friend. We'll look forward to seeing you at your daughter's wedding this year.
Thank you. September 2021, if we can all get there safe and sound.
If we can, we'll be there.
And
Thanks.
listen, I just want to add, you are a great interviewer and you are well prepared, but you're also a great interviewer.
Thank you.
A joy for me, an absolute joy.
Thank you, Billy. It's been great talking to you guys. Stay safe.
Thanks, Armen.
Good luck with Tiger on HBO. It's going to be a home run, man. I know it.
I hope so. Talk to you later.
Thank you,
All
sir.
right,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
So, how'd you like?
That's great, Frank. That was just a joy for me.
Good.
An absolute joy.
It was fun for me too, and I'm sure Armen had a great time as well.
I mean, meeting a guy like that is even worth putting up with the bullshit I got to put up with listening to you.
Speaking of bullshit, who do you like this week? Speaking of bullshit, who do you like this week?
Wait, I got a question before you go on. When you worked with Armen, when you first met him and you spent time with him, did you recognize his ability, his talent? Did he have anything that stood out, from your career with many other people?
All my life, I've recognized unique voices. I've said that over and over again. Armen was a unique voice. Billy O'Connor is a unique voice. I recognize unique voices, and I try to latch on to them. And I try to glean as much from them as they are gleaming from me. It's a two-way street. I think I recognized it in Armen right away. We had a great rapport, similar to the way I recognized it in Billy.
You know, Frank, I mean, I take that as a great compliment, and I really, really appreciate it. But I've often asked you, I mean, I've probably asked you this 10 times, what does a producer do? What does a producer do? What does a producer do? And when I read that Robert Evans book, The Boy Stays in the Film, or whatever it was called.
Kid stays.
The kid stays in the film, yeah. Kid stays in the movie.
Picture.
The kid stays in the picture, okay. But the thing he said about producer is the biggest trait for a successful producer is to recognize talent. And, well, I hope you're right. But in either case, even if you're wrong, it's flattering.
Yeah. Did that answer the question, Derek?
It did. And Billy, look at you. You got all those compliments. How you feeling?
You got to say that again, Derek. You broke up a little bit. I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Well, you'll hear it when you see the video.
No.
Yeah. So you going away, Derek? Is his audio going away?
Well, you can hear me, right, Frank?
I can hear you fine.
Yeah. It's just
Now I can hear you.
it's its
Okay.
connection. Okay, I'll say it again. I'll try to get it in again.
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay, Billy, I was saying, look at you with all of the compliments. You
Oh, yeah. What are you kidding me? I'm loving life. Matter of fact, I got to get a bigger hat. That hat ain't fitting me no more.
Hey, my wife sent you guys both ice cream as well. Come on.
Oh, I thought that was you.
No, come on. I didn't even give it a thought. I didn't even give it a thought. You're lucky my wife likes Nia. Made a big impression on her.
Well, not to drag this on, but it's so funny that you told me that the ice cream was coming, and then when it got here, I thought it was so uncharacteristic that when it got here, everybody in the family asked, "Who's the ice cream from?" And I thought, I don't remember. I don't know who it's from. I think it's from my family. And then we remembered that it was from you. My wife remembered.
But don't be calling it ice cream. It's gelato. There's a big difference. You know, when I was in Italy, there was a gelato, maybe 2 gelato stores every single block. And I said, what is it with these people in the gelato? Until I tasted it. And you know why there was 2 gelato stores every block in Italy, because it's amazing in Italy. Just amazing.
Well, can we get on with our picks now?
Wow.
Yes. All right. Let's get on with our picks. I had a good one, too. What the hell did I do with it?
How many times have I told you to be ready when I tell you?
All right, you're ready. I'm ready, you hump. I'm ready. See what I got to put up with just to meet Armen Keteyian? I'm going to try it one more time.
Keteyian.
Keteyian. Oh man, it's hard enough pronouncing Italian names. All right, I got one that I really liked. Where is it here?
You're giving this to Frank?
Yeah, this is my pick of the week.
Oh, this is
And
your
then-
pick. Okay.
Well, what you want me to give Frank a game? Or you're going to throw him a game?
No, I got it. I'll do it.
Okay, my pick, and
You're 500 now.
okay, I got back. I'm all the way back up to even, huh?
Yep. 7 and
Oh,
7.
my pick, and you're going to love this one, Frank. Another underdog. I should just call mine the dog of the week because I never pick a favorite. My pick is New England over Miami. Miami's hot as hell. They're playing in Miami. Miami went from 3 points all the way down to 1.5. I'm going to take New England plus the 1.5.
That's an interesting pick. That's a worthwhile pick. It might work out.
Hmm.
Well, I'm waiting for the guru. I'm betting the house on this one.
I'm
The mortgage is going on this one. What do you got?
trying to figure out what's rumbling in my house
We can't
When I-
hear it.
here with the dogs.
We
I
can't hear
know, but it's rumbling in the house.
it. Oh.
You know what you do, Frank? If it's an earthquake, reach down and grab your ankles firmly.
And
And
kiss
then
my
kiss your ass goodbye.
I may not have any furniture left when I get back. All right. So now, what's my pick? I'm 8-4, by the way.
Whoa, come on now. 8-4. Hey, hey.
8-4, by the way.
Wow.
Guru.
All right, so let me see if you're gonna like this game. We got
Try the curveball, Derek.
Detroit against Tennessee.
Where?
Where are they playing?
I can tell you that.
Tell me.
I-
tell me.
I asked for 3 things.
Yeah,
2 things I asked for.
I thought you don't need those. I thought you were so good.
Tennessee.
Well, wait a second. Let me give you the Tennessee. Tennessee is at home, and the line went from 8.5 up to 11.
Oh, 11
Well,
points.
you're laying 11 points if you like Tennessee.
11 points.
Yeah.
Tennessee.
There you go.
Look at that.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. The
Yeah.
guru likes Tennessee.
Yep, the guru. 11 points? Really?
11 points from 8.5. Well, they're playing hot.
Tennessee, and a point. Tennessee given a point. Get it
There you
with a point. Next week, we have Santa Claus on.
Hey! I always said he was fictional.
He's not fictional, believe me. We have Santa Claus on, so I'm looking forward to seeing Santa. It'll be the 26th. It'll be the day after Christmas. He will have just finished his rounds. It should be an interesting interview. I want to say hello to Cheryl Pronsnick, who is Armen and Maya's assistant at the Phillips organization in San Diego. She's an ardent, she watches every week. So I want to say hi to Cheryl. Billy, you want to say hi to anybody before we sign off?
Yeah, I just want to say, well, thanks to the guys that watch it every week, and Michael and Richard, and guys from the Bronx, and the FDNY, and all those guys. But more than anything, I really, really want to thank you for having Armen on today. I really, really enjoyed the guest. It was a great interview. It was a lot of fun for me, just listening to him. It's such an easy interview, you know?
Great. So everybody out there, like Mick and Mook and Mike on Facebook, on YouTube.
And if you could get your hands on it, if his lips could talk, I heard it's a pretty good read.
I heard it. It's a pretty good read. Pretty good read. By the way, Bill Madden, we're going to be in Bill Madden's column this week, and my picture froze. So
You're okay. You're good.
it's about time for me to sign off. So goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
We'll see you next week.